So my first year of learning to code, I pretty much did it all wrong. I got caught up in all the surface level stuff, hit a massive wall, and honestly, almost gave up. I want to share this story of what I really wish I'd known right from the get-go.
Yeah, I went into this thinking, okay, if I just memorize enough commands, enough syntax, I'll eventually be able to build cool stuff, right? But nope. A few months in, I just slammed right into a wall. See, following tutorials, that was easy. But the second I tried to build something myself from scratch, everything just fell apart. It was so obvious I was missing something big, something fundamental.
So let's talk about where I started, my expectations. They were super simple. The wall I hit, though, not so much. My whole reason for starting was actually really practical. I was just so tired of duct taping different apps and services together just to get something done, you know? I wanted the freedom to build my own simple tools, solve my own little problems, and not have to rely on this patchwork of other people's software. That was it. That was the whole goal.
And that wall, man, it showed up the second the guided tours ended. As long as I was just copying and pasting from a tutorial, everything was great. But the moment I tried to change one little thing, bam, these cryptic error messages would pop up. It seriously felt like the computer knew I was faking it. The tutorials, they'd given me a fish, but I had zero clue how to actually fish for myself.
It took me a while, but I finally realized the problem wasn't me. It wasn't that I was dumb or anything. It was that my focus was just completely in the wrong place. I was burning all my energy on the shiny, surface-level stuff and totally ignoring the deeper concepts that actually make everything work.
I mean, I spent weeks debating which framework was the perfect one to learn, thinking the tool was the most important choice. I watched hours and hours of tutorials, just passively soaking it in. But the real progress, that came from everything on the right side here. Learning how to debug, how to actually read an error message and get what it's saying, that felt like a superpower. And building mental models, which is really just having a clear picture in your head of what the code is doing, that was the real game changer. And oh man, learning to read documentation, slowly, for real, was way more valuable than any tutorial I ever watched.
Okay, so the biggest turning point for me, the moment things really started to shift, was when one of these deeper concepts finally clicked. And that concept was asynchronous code. This is where I felt like I went from just copying symbols to actually understanding a conversation with the computer. For the longest time, I just could not wrap my head around this. Then I found this analogy, and it changed everything. Think of asynchronous code like a crock pot. Seriously, you put the ingredients in, you turn it on, and then you can go do other stuff, right? You can do laundry, watch TV, whatever. You don't just stand there staring at the crock pot for 8 hours. And your code, it works the exact same way. It can kick off a long task, like fetching data from a server, and then just move on to other things. It'll come back and check on the crock pot when it's done. And this quote, this just nails the biggest mistake I kept making. I was trying to use the data before it had finished cooking. When you ask an API for some data, it's not instant. That data doesn't exist yet. So any code you write that needs that data has to wait. It has to live inside that come back later part of your code. If it's outside that block, you're basically trying to serve an empty plate. It's imaginary food. My first attempts at this, well, they ended up looking like this. It's what people call callback hell. It's this messy pyramid of a function inside another function, each one waiting for the one before it. I mean, it worked, but trying to read it or figure out what was broken, it was a nightmare.
Then I learned about the more modern way, using async and await. And, well, just look at it. The logic is the exact same as that messy pyramid, but this reads like a simple top-to-bottom list of instructions. It's still doing the whole crock-pot thing behind the scenes, but it lets you write the recipe as if it's a simple step-by-step process. This was a huge unlock for me. So yeah, looking back on all those frustrating months, I've thought a lot about what I'd do differently if I were starting over today. And it really just boils down to a much simpler, more focused way of doing things. First off, I'd use way fewer tools. I'd forget about frameworks completely until I really, truly understood the fundamentals of the language itself. Second, I just build stuff constantly. Dozens of tiny little projects with just one feature, instead of trying to build one giant scary thing. And third, and this is a big one, I'd break things on purpose. I'd literally change a variable just to see what kind of error it would throw. Intentionally causing and then fixing errors is probably one of the fastest ways you can learn. I'd also focus way more on these core mental models, like this one right here. Probably the biggest mistake I see beginners make, and I made it too, is confusing your data with what you see on the screen. Think of your data as a private notebook. It's the source of truth. The screen, what we call the DOM in web development, that's just a public whiteboard. It's a projection of the data in your notebook. They're two totally separate things. Changing your notebook doesn't magically update the whiteboard. You have to be the one to explicitly erase it and rewrite it.
And of course, debugging. I've learned to debug from day one. And you don't need fancy, complicated tools. Simple commands like console.log are your best friend for checking a single value. But if you're looking at an array or an object, console.table is incredible. It formats all your data into this nice, clean table right in the console, making it so much easier to see what's really going on. Just learning which command to use when is such a fundamental skill. All right, so I want to wrap this up with a dose of honesty. After a year, yeah, I've made some progress, but I'm not an expert, not even close. Learning to code is this continuous journey, and there is a ton of stuff I'm still trying to figure out.
And this is just a tiny sample. The this keyword in JavaScript, it's notoriously tricky and its meaning can change depending on where you are in the code. Recursion, that's when functions call themselves. That still kind of bends my brain a little, if I'm being honest. And true parallelism, where you have multiple things happening at the exact same time with things like web workers, that's a whole other level. The point is, it's so important to remember that there's always a next step, and it's totally okay to not know everything. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. Looking back on my own journey, my biggest mistake was getting sidetracked by things that felt productive but weren't actually leading to any real understanding. So take a second to think about your own learning process. What's one thing you're spending a lot of time on right now that might not actually be moving the needle? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.